How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Well, my royal family, this is a long video, a very in-depth video, a very serious video, and I do have a bonus video. So, I have not lost sight, my royal family. I know y'all have noticed I have not done a lot of videos, because usually during the retrograde phase, I'm really trying to absorb and pay attention to the universe. And also, we deal with so many serious things, and something personally for myself, I'm almost on my 4th year of doing videos, is that I noticed that I can be quite intense. And so I had to learn how to lighten up, sometimes throw in some humor. And so this is one of these intense videos. And you'll fully understand if anybody's new to the True Royal family or True Royal. And the True Royal is my backup channel, is that you'll fully understand more about me, that I had to learn how to create balance, because I can really bring on the intensity. And so many have been sending me emails, and I am not ignoring you at all. So this is quite a long video, and there are some things I'm going to point out. And I would appreciate that y'all continue to point out what y'all need to point out. And please continue to bring the scriptures. We need them, my royal family. So there is a major fire in Australia. And one thing that I can truly say, that when our Father said next time fire, He is not playing. The earth is heating up, and there are fires all over the world. And given the history of Australia, I am not surprised by any of this. So, as we go on this journey, my royal family, there's some things I want to point out. So let's go click over here first. So since it's long, I'm going to try to shorten it. And I'm going to read this first. I'm not going to read the article. I'll just read the title. Now, this white man is Dr. Tom Beers, pioneering 1980s research into bushfires and climate change, has, to his dismay, proved all too accurate. So what could I have done? The scientists who predicted the bushfire emergency 4 decades ago. All right. Let me go down here to this next one. Oh, here it is. Former Australian fire chiefs said coalition ignored their advice because of climate change politics. Former head of state fire services said government fundamentally doesn't like talking about climate change. So keep that on your frontal lobe, my royal family. So this is dated November 15th, 2019. As deadly Australia bushfires rage, Sydney may be running out of water.
car's packed, ready to go. I'll make a judgment call. I might be out of here in 10 minutes, I might be out of here in half an hour. I'm not sure.
Unfortunately, we are in uncharted territory this afternoon. We've never seen this many fires concurrently at emergency warning alert level.
All right, my royal family. So, I don't want any pop-ups here. So everything look like it's copacetic. And we're going to go on more in depth, my royal family. More in depth. So let's go on this journey. And in between this in-depth video, I may stop and interject in between. So, let's continue on. Australia. Okay, now this particular video that I did, that when I was doing my research, it doesn't have the date on it, but this particular one, because I want y'all to keep dates in mind. This one was done November 8th. And today is still here, I'm in California, is the 16th. Today is the 17th.
I'm in the New South Wales Hunter Valley, one of 3 regions in the state that was affected by these catastrophic conditions yesterday. That included Greater Sydney, an area to the south of Sydney, and this area here. Now, this is the township of North Rothbury. And yesterday, it's believed here, detectives are investigating that a fire was deliberately lit. The fire raced through the forest here. These conditions are extraordinary given how dry it is here. There's been very little rain. Much of the state is in drought, and the winds were very high. The temperatures were pushed to the high 30s yesterday. Firefighters were able to stop the fire from spreading. They brought in fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters to drop water at the critical moment. But their resources are really stretched. There are major fires still burning out of control in the north of the state, and those conditions are predicted to get even worse again over the weekend. For now, this report from Alex Thompson.
An incendiary front which would stretch from Plymouth to Aberdeen. A fire crew video conveys what the official rating of catastrophic bushfire means. Today, the commanding officer gave his latest assessment.
We had 300 new fires to deal with over today. Some started and were dealt with very rapidly. Others stayed around for a few hours, and indeed others we're still dealing with. But it was an extraordinary effort right across the at-risk areas. The firefighters, the extraordinary rate of attack, the rapid response, and the use of aircraft made a significant difference in bringing so many of them under control.
Inland to the west, the sun side of the walls of fire. Seaward to the east, the smoke side, Sydney Harbour gone sepia. Thousands displaced, over 600 schools shut, more than 150 homes destroyed by at least 70 fires, 45 or more still out of control. And all of it much earlier in the season and much bigger. And all of this predicted by climatologists after 3 years of drought. So the writing's on the wall, or on the sign.
Despite the fact that we live in a rainforest, we've always been aware that
with the changing climate, we're prone to bushfire, and we thought one day it might come to this, where the virgin rainforest might start burning, and it's just started.
But Amanda's Prime Minister won't mention climate change. In a country hell-bent on exploiting the biggest export coal reserves on the planet, he's all about thanking people for responding to the mess, not answering questions about what's causing it.
We're still a long way from being out of the woods on this one. What I've been particularly impressed by over the last few days has been the level of preparations that have been put in place to prepare for this day.
So this week, Australia. Earlier in the autumn, it was California, yes, California again. Before that, fires across the taiga, the planet's largest forest, ablaze across northern Russia. Even as the Amazon was, yet again, burning at the hands of illegal ranchers. Australia, Russia, Brazil, USA, Morrison, Putin, Bolsonaro, Trump. Ever feel there's a pattern? Is nature visiting vengeance on leaders who would ignore her science?
As Alex was saying, public reactions to these fires, both from those within government and those directly affected, really drawing sharp lines in the debate over climate change here. But it's not just the fire season that's in frame as far as that goes, it's conservation as well. We've been to Queensland, where the Great Barrier Reef is coming under increasing threat from climate change. At the exact same time, the Australian government has approved a new coal mine in the Galilee Basin, with more planned, an area with billions of tonnes of thermal coal. It's an issue that drove the last election here, the coal-fired government of Scott Morrison winning, with the promise of more jobs and development for those in danger of being left behind, but all at a price, according to scientists on the reef. The state of Queensland is doubly blessed. Its coastline fringed by a wonder of the natural world, the largest living structure on Earth, the Great Barrier Reef. And deep in the state's interior, miles upon miles of coal reserves just begging to be dug up. But the expansion of one threatens the other with extinction. The government of Prime Minister Scott Morrison has picked a side.
This is coal. Don't be afraid.
He's the one with the lump of coal in his hand.
Knows the rule on crops. It's coal.
His proselytising for new mines may have won him the last election, but it's prompted protests in the cities. Even as scientists warn, there's little time left to turn the tide against climate change.
We've done calculations that show if we continue along a business as usual carbon dioxide emissions trajectory, by mid-century, if we continue down our current path, there'll be no place left in the world where reefs are able to grow.
And so, on the Northern Barrier Reef, we went to film with scientists searching with new urgency for signs of life, measuring resilience, studying threats to the coral that range from predatory starfish to farm runoff, extreme weather, and warming seas that bleach and kill the coral. In places here we saw for ourselves there's only 5% coral cover now. Young staghorn corals have settled in small patches. Elsewhere there are stronger signs of recovery. Baby coral only 1 to 2 years old and new growth. But the scientists are yet to see the kind of diversity in marine life and families of coral that once thrived here.
The reason this site is particularly significant is it's one of our long-term sites to monitor butterfly fish. And we used to get over 19 species on the transects here. Now we're lucky if we find 6. That's species. So we've lost a lot of fish.
A warm water event in 2016, when average temperatures rose above the highest ever recorded, left 81% of the coral on this northern part of the reef severely bleached. A third of all shallow water coral was lost. And then in 2017, so just a year later, another marine heatwave brought even further devastation to the northern 2/3 of the reef. Last year, there was a 90% decline in new coral forming. Marine ecologist Cassandra Thompson was among those who surveyed the wreckage.
It's really disheartening, and it's not so much that, it's after the fact when people don't believe you, it's really hard, and people still go, oh no, but someone said that it's fine, and I'll argue with you, and you're like, oh, no, it wasn't fine. It's very sad.
It's crystal clear in the latest Great Barrier Reef Outlook report. It's downgraded the outlook for the coral reefs from poor to very poor, citing climate change as the biggest threat to the system.
Our carbon dioxide emissions are very clearly damaging the reef.
Professor Ken Caldera fears without urgent political and social change, it might already be too late to save the reefs. He's stunned by recent decisions to approve new coal mines in Queensland.
For a modern Western industrialized society to be expanding its fossil fuel infrastructure at this point seems to me completely crazy, and to me it's as if you might as well take a knife and run through the great museums of the world slashing paintings.
Australia has the most valuable coal export market in the world, last year worth more than £36 billion. More than enough to cover a fine dining experience for 1,000 executives of the resources industry in Brisbane recently. On the menu, Moroccan lamb, McLaren Vale Shiraz, and an Australian Prime Minister.
How good is mining for Australia?
He'd come to tell them he'd cracked down on what he called the new breed of radical activism and the unfair targeting of the fossil fuel industry, which perhaps explains the reaction from the crowd when we asked a question.
Prime Minister, my name's Kylie Morris. I'm a correspondent for Britain's Channel 4 News. I'm just wondering, given the efforts that other nations are making to reduce their carbon emissions, and given that places like the Great Barrier Reef we know under threat from climate change, your own government has issued an outlook report saying that climate change poses the greatest threat to the reef. How can Australia justify opening new coal mines at this time in the Galilee Basin? Thank you.
Because we've got the best mining industry in the world that understands how to do this job properly and to do it sensitively and to care for the environment, because they're in a country which has a serious plan to address climate change. Australia's doing its bit, but Australia's not going to write a blank cheque with its own economy on this issue, which requires action from right around the globe. We're doing our bit. We'll continue to do our bit. The resources industry will continue to do its bit. And I would encourage you, while you're here, I don't know whether you're a resident here or not, or you're just visiting, but there's plenty of other information I'm sure we can share with you, which might be able to inform you on these matters.
In an effort to get better informed, we went to
So I'm going to stop here for a minute. So, I already read the headlines. My royal family and their prime minister has the same attitude as Trump, or let's say the same attitude as Esau. It is quite obvious, my royal family, all of the fires and even the other patterns of the weather, that there is something going on Earth. And Esau choose to ignore it and choose to continue to rape it and monetarily benefit from it. So they just figured we'll ignore it and it'll some kind of way disappear. Well, when things are on fire, and I have often said, my royal family, never holler for help. Holler fire and see how quickly people will pay attention to you, because nobody don't want their shit to burn up. So as we continue on, my royal family.
mining country to interview coal crusader George Christensen MP.
It's about opening up the Galilee Basin, a new coal basin. And obviously there are a lot of people out there that don't want that to happen if climate change is causing the reef to deteriorate.
Well, that's what your own government's report says, the Great Barrier Reef Outlook report released 2 months ago.
So if climate change is causing the reef to deteriorate...
Do you not accept that climate change
Well, I'm just starting a sentence. If climate change is causing the reef to deteriorate, then, as I said, displacing the coal that would otherwise come out of Abbott Point with coal that comes out of India or Indonesia or Mozambique or wherever, I mean, nothing's going to change.
while Australia prepares to dig up the coal that someone else would if they didn't and ship it somewhere else to be burned and send megatons of carbon emissions into the atmosphere, out on the reef, the scientists can show you the damage already done. For it to recover, what it needs is time without more disturbances. And that's something it's very unlikely to get. As temperatures increase, it's predicted there'll be another bleaching in the next few years. The average return time for warm water events has reduced from every 10 to 15 years to every 2 to 3.
Even the fastest growing coral is only growing at like 10 centimetres a year.
Right.
So to cover this area with coral again is going to take a good decade or so.
There are those who draw catastrophic conclusions to compare the last great extinction with what humans are doing to the planet now.
The last thing that happened to reefs that might be as big as what we're doing now is the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. And it just seems completely crazy that to make a little bit more money this year, we're willing to inflict damage on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years into the future.
If the damage continues at pace without sufficient time for the reefs to recover, it's not only the coral we risk losing, but the abundance of life that goes with it.
All right, my royal family. So, what I liked about this particular video was that it's showing you how even the coral reefs are being affected by the climate change over in Australia, and you know, the great denial that Esau is having, and that's basically it there. And let's continue on to get even more deeper, and don't forget I have a bonus video about these fires. Now, this video that I'm going to present my royal family was done on the 15th. So we're going to get more updated because the first one was the 8th, and so now we're present.
We are in the midst of a bushfire crisis tonight, the likes of which this state has never seen. Right now, there are an unprecedented 17 fire fronts burning out of control at emergency level. The RFS believes people are trapped in their homes across multiple locations. We have reporters in key positions at Port Macquarie, Bulahdelah and at RFS headquarters tonight, and Mark Burrows begins our coverage.
I am blocking the highway, so...
East of Taree, residents bolt, and the battle to save Harrington is on. And then, 2 minutes later...
A mighty inferno.
We've been here for 50 years and this is the worst I've seen it.
Every possible aircraft thrown into the fight. The Huey chopper, and off the coast the massive Ericsson heli tanker sucking up seawater before shutting down the blaze. Every man, woman and family pet beating a hasty retreat.
The wind had changed, it was coming towards us, that it was time to get out.
The fire front in the Crowdy Bay National Park seems to go on forever. A huge blaze needing the biggest plane in the RFS arsenal. Close by, this was the view on the Pacific Highway, just south of the Taree Service Centre.
They've closed the road, we're crawling along.
And this was why. Fires burning west of the highway at Hillville. This homestead surrounded on all sides. The RFS warned that the mid-north coast would be ground zero. At Foster, a blaze simmered in town. Just south of Taree, the Hillville front, closing the Pacific Highway down to Bulahdelah and threatening homes around Possum Brush. At Crowdy Head, the fire burned down to Harrington. Inland from Coffs Harbour, several joining forces to burn through over 100,000 hectares. West of Nambucca Heads, 5 emergency fires ripped through national parks. And at Port Macquarie, several blazes around town with fears they'd join. And this was the view in the centre of the tourist town. A red haze descending on the outskirts. They are poised to run.
My missus has already got bags packed and she's left, so I'm just waiting and I'll take the dog.
Temperatures in the low to mid-30s, winds gusting up to 80 kilometres an hour. Port Macquarie is at the tip of a blowtorch.
You need to know, though, once a fire gets to an emergency alert level, we may not be able to get to help you. We haven't got the resources to be able to put into every single area, so you must be prepared to survive yourself.
Fires are churning through bone-dry bush. And the RFS is warning because of the winds, embers are being carried more than 6 kilometres ahead of the fire front, creating spot fires and a dangerous new challenge for the RFS. Same conditions at Woodford in the Blue Mountains. Howling winds pushing flames to the edge of properties. 200 firefighters from the RFS and Fire Rescue New South Wales are on the scene near Riches Avenue and Park and Valley Roads. Mark Burrows, 9 News.
It is a frightening situation. Let's go straight now to Nine's Grace Fitzgibbon, who is in Port Macquarie for us now. And Grace, 4 blazes are surrounding this town. Residents very much on high alert there.
Good evening, Deb. That's right. Right now I'm on the Point Drive just south of Port Macquarie. Have a look at these flames that are creeping through the bushland here and dangerously close to dozens of houses here. Take a look behind me at just all of the residents out on the street. They're watching on anxiously, hoping that none of these embers jump the road. The whole of Port Macquarie is on high alert tonight. There's 1 emergency blaze and 3 others out of control surrounding the town, and fears that they could tonight join. Deb, the firefighters on the ground here are telling me this situation is going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better.
Yeah, hard to comprehend. Grace Fitzgibbon there with the latest. Let's go now to Ruth Wynne-Williams, who is just out of Bulahdelah. Ruth, fires on the mid-north coast. They're now reaching homes.
Deb, I want to take you straight to some pictures just into our newsroom now. These have been taken just at the other end of this road closure at the Pacific Highway here at Bobbin Creek, where, as you'll be able to see there, some houses and properties have already begun to be claimed by these fires. This is exactly what authorities have been warning about. The advice from officials tonight right here on the Pacific Highway is if you are planning on travelling through to the mid-north coast, then don't. Road closures are in place in and out of Taree. And at this time on a Friday night, this road would ordinarily be heaving with traffic. You might be able to see the sun is quite strong. It is incredibly hot here, Deb, but you might be able to see a number of trucks. A huge line of trucks is already pulled up on the side of the motorway here. They are going nowhere fast. And that is exactly what officials want tonight. They don't want anyone going into the fire ground. They say this is for everyone's safety. These barricades will stay in place until these fires are out.
Yeah, big impact being felt there. Ruth Wynne-Williams, thank you. We've got pictures just in now from the Blue Mountains. A fierce fire is still burning at emergency level at Woodford. This fire is threatening homes south of the Great Western Highway, and residents are being urged to seek shelter as this fire approaches. Wind is causing tough conditions for crews, embers being blown ahead of the fire front, and they're also creating spot fires. Jane Azzopardi is with us now from RFS headquarters. Jane, there are fears now that people could actually be trapped inside their homes.
That's right, Deb. At multiple locations along the mid-north coast, we are hearing at this stage unconfirmed reports that there are people trapped inside homes and that fire crews are not able to reach these people. The advice for them is to stay inside, seek shelter inside and wait until the fire front passes, and then when it has passed, try to get away from that structure if it is burning. It is very grim advice to pass on. And Deb, even worse, we are told that there is hours and hours to go of this fire situation, which is worsening by the hour. We are expecting winds to change. To bring us up to date, I'm joined now by the Rural Fire Service Commissioner, Shane Fitzsimmons. Shane, I think people in Sydney, when they think about terrible fires, we're thinking recently of Tathra and the Blue Mountains. How does this one compare, or these ones compare?
I think that's the key point. If you look at Tathra, yes, it was an extremely destructive and damaging fire, but it was a single fire. You look at the Blue Mountains back in 2013, there were 3 fires in the Blue Mountains, and one of those fires was the most damaging and most destructive in the lower Blue Mountains near Winmalee. But unfortunately today, we're breaking new ground in New South Wales. We've been up to 17 fires spread from the Queensland border down to the mid-coast area of New South Wales. 17 fires burning at emergency warning alert level, as well as 1 burning in the Blue Mountains. So you've got a pretty significant geographic area. And because you've got so many of these fires burning in a particularly dry landscape, we keep talking about this, but the volatility of the fires is quite extraordinary. There is just no moisture in the vegetation. Fires are starting extremely easy and spreading very quickly. The fires are particularly hot and creating a lot more energy than would otherwise be the case. And we're seeing fire behaviour with spot fires and spotting distances more than twice what we would normally expect under these sorts of fire danger conditions. As you indicate, that this afternoon things did deteriorate and they continue to be very problematic with extraordinary fire behaviour impacting loads and loads of different communities, small communities, isolated communities, village communities. There's all manner of population areas with people's homes, people's businesses, people's farms that are all being impacted. They're still being impacted as we speak. And as you say, we've got many hours yet left. And unfortunately, the southerly change is going to present a whole heap of more problems.
And just quickly, given the ground we're talking about, you're not going to know for days how many properties and potentially casualties you'll have.
That's exactly right. We are, as we speak, in targeted areas. We've got helicopters, we've got crews on the ground, we've got people trying to get into some of these areas where we haven't been able to get to yet and take some stock of what might be there. But you're right, we are going to be looking across the enormity of these fire grounds, remembering just the fires we've got burning today are covering an area more than twice the entire area of New South Wales that burnt through bushfires last year. In one day alone is the fires that we're dealing with. So we've got days ahead yet before we get a real understanding of the damage and destruction.
Well, we wish you and your crews the best of luck, Commissioner. Thank you for joining us. Deb, a long night ahead for fire crews and residents in these areas.
And we will cross back to you as soon as we get more information, Jane, as well at RFS HQ. Now, these fires, they are so bad, they're creating their own extreme weather systems. Belinda's here with us now to tell us more. Belinda, just how much of a danger do these fires pose?
Yes, Deb, these fire-fueled storms, they are called pyrocumulus clouds. They happen during extreme bushfires when intense heat and rapidly rising smoke head up into the atmosphere. The smoke absorbs moisture, cools, expands and creates that cloud. It can be unstable, generate severe wind gusts and even lightning strikes. The RFS warning tonight, these clouds are very dangerous. Don't be caught out in the open. And this is the view of the fires from space. You can see the huge amount of smoke heading out over the Tasman and towards New Zealand. More challenging conditions for fire crews tomorrow. I will have further details on that later, Deb.
It is just such an extraordinary situation, Belinda. Thank you. Kelly Fedor joins us now in the studio as well. Kelly, you've got live information on these fires burning out of control.
That's right, Deb. We've got a live feed of the map from Rural Fire Service showing us exactly where these fires are. The red icon represents emergency level, which means lives are at risk. Yellow is watch and act, which means that people need to start preparing to leave their homes in case conditions change. Right now, there are 17 fires burning at emergency level. The latest to be upgraded is at Coombs Gap Complex near Port Macquarie. The fire burning out of control south of the Oxley Highway is quickly spreading to the east, and I'll keep updating you throughout the bulletin.
Thank you, Kelly. It's an unfolding situation. We'll have more on the fires shortly.
All right. All right, my royal family. So, let's go back over here. So anybody that's new to the True Royal family or new to True Royal, I often talk about the number 17. And I had a spiritual experience and Yah designated me a number. And in the word, 17 means overcoming the enemy and a complete victory. Now, I'm setting up for the bonus video, my royal family. Now, we seen first, these videos, and we're showing people that seems to be vastly concerned about the fires and the environment. But what we did not see, my royal family, are the Aborigines, the original people of Australia, the ones that they massacred, because they are also being affected. Now, I could have showed how they cared for the animals and all, but we did not see not one at all. Esau. you have to atone for the atrocities that you did to those people there. And you so wrapped up in yourself, even the ones that act like they are so vastly concerned about what is going on, not a one interviewed the Aborigines, and I took my time to look and I couldn't find it. Now maybe somebody can else find it, but I didn't find it. And y'all know I research shit deep, real deep. So to solidify in the enemy's frontal lobe and also to the royal family, we're gonna watch this bonus video.
The Aborigines were deemed to be subhuman, little more than animals, which was to justify not only the theft of their land, but their extermination. An edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, still in circulation when I was at school, described them as only an animal of prey, more ferocious than the leopard or the hyena. He devours his own species. So they were hunted and raped and massacred, and few doubted at the time that genocide was official policy. A government report in the 1850s spoke of the success of poisoning Aborigines, 100 of them laid out at a time. But until quite recently, little of this was even acknowledged. In Tasmania, the Aborigines were said to have died out. In fact, they were hunted along with kangaroos and almost wiped out. In New South Wales, by 1845, the tribe who had watched Captain Cook sail here into Botany Bay was reduced to 3 women and a man. In Victoria, an Aborigine called old Mr. Burt recalled this story told by his mother.
They buried our babies with only their heads above the ground. All in a row they were. Then they had a test to see who could kick the babies' heads off the furthest. One man clobbered a baby's head off from horseback. They then spent most of the day raping the women. Most of them were then tortured to death by sticking sharp things like spears up their vaginas until they died. They tied the men's hands behind their backs, then cut off their penis and testicles, and watched them run around screaming until they died.
One of the most enduring myths about the Aborigines is that they did not fight back. In fact, the War of Resistance lasted more than a century, some of it here on the banks of the Hawkesbury River, north of Sydney. During the 1930s, my father built a cottage here, on the beach at an Aboriginal place called Patonga. I think we knew that somebody had lived at Patonga at some time, but no one talked about it. In fact, an entire nation had lived here on and off for thousands of years. They were called the Durag, a unique Aboriginal people, tall and slender, whose country extended to a 40-mile radius north of Sydney, and the mighty Hawkesbury River was theirs. And when the British established the town of Windsor in the early 1800s, a great war began. This war was not recorded in the Imperial Chronicles of Australia. Growing up here, I knew nothing about it, and I suspect that's still true of the people in the smart beach houses here today. And yet the Durag inflicted on the British a casualty rate greater than that sustained by the Australian Armed Forces during all of World War II. And finally, after 22 years, outnumbered and without guns, they went down fighting to the last man, woman and child, a complete nation. Today, in a land of many cenotaphs and war memorials on which invariably is written, "Lest we forget," not one of them stands for those who fought and fell in their own country. By the 1920s, the British invasion had caused the deaths of at least 250,000 black Australians. Genocide on a massive scale. But this fact remained suppressed, except in the living memory of those who survived. Here in the Northern Territory, in the great isolated heartland of Australia, the killing of Aborigines continued well into the 20th century, and most of these also remain secret. However, in 1928, 150 miles from Alice Springs, a gang of police and cattlemen massacred at least 50 Aborigines, perhaps many more, and word got out. A public inquiry was held, and its findings were summarized in these 3 words: the shooting was justified. In giving evidence, Constable William Murray said, "We shot to kill. What use is a wounded blackfella 100 miles from civilized Australia?" The nation on the other side of the frontier has risen from its deathbed and has begun to fight back. And what a spectacle it is. As the first Australians challenged some of the greatest transnational companies in the world, and governments, and historians, and assumptions and attitudes, and disease and neglect, in order that they may claim back their share of the oldest continent, their country. This film is a glimpse of their epic story. When Captain Cook landed here in Botany Bay, he was under orders not to raise the Union Jack without the consent of the inhabitants of Australia. But Cook and Captain Arthur Phillip, who followed with the first fleet of convicts, both disobeyed these instructions. And what followed was one of the darkest and least known periods in the history of Britain's empire. The British declared Australia an empty land, in spite of the fact that there were tribes with a total population of at least 300,000, perhaps as many as 1 million. No one knew exactly, because the first Australians were not counted as human beings. Decimation was swift. Aboriginal blood carried no resistance to white disease. Lieutenant Brady, Royal Marines, reported in 1788, "From the great number of dead natives found in every part of Sydney Harbour, it appears that the smallpox has made dreadful havoc among them." But not nearly as much havoc as massacre. No British colony was born under so cruel a star as Australia. The early convict ships had brought thousands of white slaves, mostly English and Irish, transported for crimes of poverty and politics, and they became the instruments of massacre, directed by Christian gentlemen who had brought with them attitudes of racial superiority that were the staple of empire. Ironically, their cruelty was at odds with liberal reformers in Britain who were then seeking to end the slave trade. In 1837, a House of Commons Select Committee condemned the atrocities against the Aborigines. But the difference between sympathy and action was a convenient 15,000 miles.
I am calling a corroboree of all the natives of New South Wales to send a petition to the King in an endeavour to improve our conditions. All the black man wants is representation in federal parliament. There is also plenty of fish in the river for us all, and land to grow all we want. 150 years ago, the Aboriginals owned Australia, and today he demands more than the white man's charity. He wants the right to live.
At that time, the 1930s, the Protection Acts were in full force. The Chief Protector had the power to send mixed-blood children to missions, having wrenched them away from their Aboriginal mothers. In this way, the mothers could continue to serve their white masters, the masters were saved any possible embarrassment, and the children were civilized with Christian ritual. If any Aborigine objected to this arrangement, the Chief Protector could imprison him or her without trial, all of which, said the law, was to save the natives from being overwhelmed by the white race. In recent years, many of those children sent to the missions have tried to find their families.
Well, the first time with me, as the story goes, is my grandpa said, "You don't take that kid," you know, so I was left. He stopped him, but then the following year, months later, he came back again, and then I was out with some other kids, and most of the old people had gone away from the station. And so Constable Bill McKinnon was able to take me, put me on the camel and take me, you know, till people realised the day after, or the 2 days after that, I was missing.
Well, my royal family, I wanted to touch upon that because, like I said before, in these fires, the Aborigines are being affected too, and they didn't mention them not once at all, and they want to ignore everything. And if you do your deeper research, my royal family, in Australia, the enemy over there is in big denial about what they did to the Aborigines there. And I remember my father teaching me about them, and he told me that they literally tried to kill all of them. There were many massacres. They enslaved them. There was many atrocious things that they did to the Aborigines. And we are seeing literally the first phases of what the divine hand is doing to the enemy. And I had said a while back when I was reporting the fires here in California, the message that I got from Yahweh was that he's going to keep Esau exhausted. This is the system that they set up for themselves. They got all these departments and titles and things, and everything is under control. And they literally are exhausted trying to deal with these fires. Because when I was listening to the news last week, they were trying to battle 50 fires at once. Now, that's what they said on the news. Now, most likely it was triple or double, because we know that they underreport truth. So that is our duty and responsibility on these channels, is to bring truth. And, I wanted to drop some history on the royal family. The real reason why this is going on, and this is also a purification process. Also, this picture here, let me see here. No, let me bring this one up. This one, let's see here, what we get here. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. Let's clear that up. Okay, that's fine. You can literally see it from the satellites are taking pictures. So these, when it's that major and you can see it from that afar, it ain't no joke. And there's gonna always be fires. It's literally burning around the globe. Let's not forget the Amazon. Let's not forget Akibalon and everything. But you see how Esau gets down. And I still want to point out that even the ones that so-called, unquote, act like they care about the climate and all that. No. They only worried about their immediate situation. That's how the enemy get down. So we're not fooled at all. The unquote liberals, they think that they have they think that they have us under control because, they will come and walk gently, but they have a hidden agenda. And never forget, they still want to uphold white supremacy because they benefit from the system that they have also created. This thing is global with them because wherever they go, they want to have a sense of comfort, and that's not going to happen anymore. They have made everybody else uncomfortable, and it is time for Esau and also their supporters to be uncomfortable and to atone to these atrocities that they have done worldwide. And can you imagine, my royal family? This is just a little bit. Wait till the divine hand comes down fully. That's why don't ever get fooled by the way I talk. I am most humble. I am not proud. Most humble. So, my royal family, render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And it's always my royal family. I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.